Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ian McNaughton, Big E here. Thank you very much for joining me. Today I'm going to be doing Ian Review Sports, this time for the 2021 Italian Grand Prix, which took place on Sunday in Monza. I'm going to go through my takeaways, my thoughts on the race winner, which was Daniel Ricciardo, and even talk a little bit about spring qualifying. So without further ado, let's get into it. Daniel Ricciardo wins the 2021 Italian Grand Prix in his McLaren. It was a great race from start to finish. It's his first win since 2018, first double podium for McLaren since 2014, first race win for McLaren since 2011, and their first 1-2 since 2010. So all in all, this was the big McLaren weekend. Team Papaya, as Ricardo mentioned, with Lando Norris finishing second, Ricardo finishing first. Lando got his best career finish this past weekend. So all in all, a successful and outstanding weekend for McLaren F1. They needed a day like this because of how badly things went last week at the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. They were not qualifying well. I believe Ricardo finished 9th and Norris finished 10th, or vice versa. Was not great last week in Zandvoort. This week, they come back with a 1-2, just what the doctor ordered. They are now up on Ferrari, 215 points to 201.5 in a constructors title. McLaren has 1 win, 5 podiums. Ferrari has no wins, 3 podiums. That's the 3-4 battle in the constructors championship right now. Driver standings. Valtteri Bottas is now in third. He's got 141 points with no wins, 8 podiums. Norris is 132 points, no wins, 4 podiums. Ricardo is 8th with 83 points, 1 win, 1 podium. Sainz has 97.5 points with 2 podiums. Leclerc has 104 points with 1 podium. He's in 6th. So it's Mercedes 3 in the Drivers' Championship. Mercedes 3 with Bottas. Norris is 4th with McLaren. Leclerc is 6th with Ferrari. Sainz is 7th with Ferrari, and Ricardo is 8th with McLaren. I think there's a lot of lessons we can take away from this race. The big one is never quit, be patient, take your own way, bet on yourself, that kind of thing. Where Ricardo made the bold decision to leave Red Bull and to go to Renault in 2019, and I know Ricardo got a lot of flack from going from one of the best teams in Formula One to Renault. I get that. I'm sure everybody, even Lewis Hamilton, will get flack for doing something like that. But it's kind of like an analogy I heard from Colin Cowherd. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with the Colin Cowherd analogy, where just because something is not good, something is bad, does not mean that you should give up and that you should stop doing it. He used the analogy of like Star Wars movies. Just because these Star Wars movies are bad doesn't mean we should stop making Star Wars movies, because then we're never going to get good Star Wars movies again if we just stop making them. Or like the Los Angeles Lakers, where the Lakers, shouldn't stop fielding a basketball team because, we're not good anymore, because then you're not going to win a championship if you just give up and you just fool the team. So that's my feeling with Ricardo, is just because you might not be good now doesn't mean you should give up, or that you should quit F1, or that you shouldn't be trying. You should always be, trying your best, because one day it will pay off. It will work out. You will be successful. And this weekend, Ricardo was successful. Again, you're going to get a lot of negativity along the way. He's faced his fair share of it. But I mean, if you believe this is the best thing to do for your career, if Ricardo thinks that going to Renault from Red Bull is the best thing to do for his career, go for it. There's nothing wrong with taking a risk that you think is worth doing. Nothing wrong with that. It might not go the way you thought it would, but there's nothing wrong with at least trying to, take a risk and do something different. And the other thing that I've noticed with Ricardo is that he's had a lot of fun along the way. I know, 2019 with Renault wasn't great. He finished ninth in a constructor or in a drivers' championship. Finished fifth last year with Renault. Not great. I'm sure they wanted to go, further up the, rankings. They wanted to do more than just fifth and ninth in drivers' championship. But he's had a lot of fun along the way. He's really enjoyed what he's doing and the career he's in. And I think that's something that everybody should be taking note of, is the fact that this guy, he goes to work every day. He seems to enjoy it. He has a lot of fun. He's a really personable guy. And I wish there were more Daniel Ricciardos in the world, but that's just how it is. Not everybody's going to be as happy and joyous and, nice to be around as he is. That's what makes this win so big, because he's one of the nicest, upbeat, positive guys in Formula One, and he gets the win. He also might be better than we think. I got an article coming out soon for speakyourpiece.ca on my F1 driver rankings. If I had to build a team, which drivers would I want talent-wise, 1 through 25? I'm doing 25 drivers. And Ricardo I have in the top 10. I think I even have him close to the top 5, which, some people are like, you sure? Is he really that good? He hasn't really done anything the last few years. It's like, yeah, I think he's really good. I think he's really talented. He's a little bit on the older side, I believe, at about 31 right now, but he's really talented. He's really good. He's a, impressive driver. He showed why this past weekend, not only just in the race, but in the sprint qualifying, in real qualifying. I think he's a really talented driver. Maybe just this weekend was his, bread and butter at Monza, but I think he's a really talented driver. And sometimes I think we're selling him short on how talented he actually is. And good on Lando for being a real team sport. I know he wanted to win that race yesterday. Like anybody, you want to win anytime you can, go for the win. But, there's nothing wrong with second place either, especially when your teammate gets the win. Nothing wrong with second place. And like you said, he'll have chances down the road. He'll have opportunities in the future to win races. So hopefully he can, pull it off. He can make it happen. We'll see. Those are kind of my big lessons, my big takeaways from Ricardo winning. Of course. The next thing I want to discuss is the Max Verstappen Lewis Hamilton crash on lap 26. Obviously, I have to mention that. Lewis pits on lap 26. He has a 4.2 second pit stop. Max pits on lap 23, I believe it was, and he had an 11-second pit stop. Really bad. The 4.2 is not great, but the 11-second is awful. As Verstappen comes down the straight, Lewis is exiting pit lane. Max sets a fastest lap time of 1:25, 173. So he's got the fastest lap time as Hamilton's coming out the pits. It's a really good lap from Max coming down the straight. Hamilton comes out ahead of Verstappen. Hamilton gives Verstappen a little space around turn 1 and 2. He gives him a little bit of space. He is still ahead. Verstappen never gets equal to or ahead of Lewis, resulting in a massive crash, which saw Verstappen's car on top of Hamilton's as Max was trying to get around on the inside, from the outside to the inside. Lewis gave him a little bit of space, not really, not a ton, a little bit. But as a result, Max's car went over the sausage curb, hopped up onto the top of Lewis's car. Both men had to retire from the race. Personally, I classified it as a racing incident. Verstappen faces a 3-place grid penalty for his actions for trying to get in on Lewis and not backing out. So now Verstappen, wherever he finishes in qualifying in Sochi, he'll have to start 3 places behind there. And I thought this was more of a racing incident than what we saw at Silverstone this year, where Hamilton was assessed a 10-second penalty for his involvement in his role in the crash, where Verstappen turns in on him. Verstappen has the line. Hamilton doesn't really have the line. And it's similar to the lap 1 incident earlier in this race, where Hamilton and Verstappen were fighting for space. And then going into turn 4 and 5, the next chicane, Verstappen just pushes Hamilton out of the way. Hamilton doesn't have any space. and he has to go over the sausage curves. It's not as extreme damage wise, where he's not on top of somebody's car. He's just driving over curbs. So that, I think had a role and an impact in this crash. And that was considered a racing incident on lap one. So I think if you're comparing incidences where in Silverstone, I think it was a racing incident. I don't think any driver really should have been punished for that. I think turn one or lap one, turn 4 and 5 earlier in this race, that was a racing incident. And I think this was also a racing incident. I don't think Verstappen should be getting a 3-place grid penalty for causing this accident. I think both drivers are responsible for it. I think it's really also tough to tell a driver in the thick of a driver's championship race, hey, back out. You'll get them next time, because there isn't a lot of next times in Formula One, especially when you just set your fastest lap. You're not going to get many more opportunities after this to pass somebody. Overall, I don't think this changes much in the drivers' championship, if we're being completely honest. Both drivers are in their own league. Like, they're ahead of everybody else, so far ahead of everyone else that this doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Losing ground per se is not a concern. Red Bull might be more content with the result than Mercedes, considering that the Mercedes car and pit crew I thought were better on Sunday than Red Bull were. And Red Bull is behind in the Constructors' Championship, but Verstappen still leads the Drivers' Championship. For the Constructors this weekend, it'll hurt a little bit with Perez also getting his penalty. So the Drivers' Championship, this is an okay result for Verstappen. In the grand scheme of things for Red Bull, it's not great for the Constructors' title. So in conclusion, I thought this was a racing incident. I don't think anybody should have been punished for this. I don't see how Verstappen gets a 3-place grid penalty. The other problem is just the extreme result of this incident, where we have a car on top of another car, where you don't see that very often. It very rarely happens. I wonder if we sometimes overreact because we have something like that happen, where we don't usually have that happen. We hardly ever see a car on top of one another. But when a car is on top of a car, we feel the need to do something, especially the FIA and Formula One, to talk about safety. We talk about safety and trying to protect drivers. Well, that's safety and protecting drivers. So maybe Verstappen will know better for next time. I don't know. I just think that's unfair for him that he gets a 3-place grid penalty. I don't know how this will impact the rest of the season. Again, it's really tough to tell a driver in the thick of the championship race, hey, back off. Hey, slow down. Hey, give way. Like, good luck. Good luck. I can't imagine doing that, but I guess that's the closest thing you can do to say, hey, slow down or back off or give some space. Lewis, I think, was fine in that. I don't think he had to give room. He gave him a little room. He didn't have to. He didn't get room in turn one. That's fine. If that's how we're going to race, that's how we're going to race. That's what we're doing today. That's what we're doing today. So, speaking of Mercedes drivers, Valtteri Bottas finishes third after starting last. He finished first in sprint qualifying, which I'll discuss more later on. However, he started last due to exceeding his quota of engines for this year. So he got a new engine on Sunday. He started 19th as a result, finished third, and added 15 points to his driver championship total. I think the best part about his race, he had a tremendous race. This was a Sergio Perez-like recovery from Bottas. I think the best part of the race, though, was in the post-race interview when David Coulthard was interviewing him, and they had the Verstappen-Hamilton crash on the background, and David asked, Valtteri, what did you think of the crash? And he's just like, yeah, unfortunate accident. Like, just shrugged his shoulders, like, yeah, I don't know. You're asking the wrong guy in a way. His face really said it all. I thought it was great. So I was wondering coming into this race, both Russell and Bottas, and what their compete level, what their competitiveness was going to be like this weekend, since we already know where their seats will be next year, where they're going to be driving next year. With Russell going to Mercedes, Bottas going to Alfa Romeo. And they both really impressed me, especially Bottas. I thought Bottas was really impressive. He drove the hell out of that car, going from 19th to 3rd. Excellent job by Valtteri Bottas. Well done. He deserves 3rd place. Kudos to him. And then it was a bad weekend for AlphaTauri. Speaking of, Bottas started 19th, and that was because of Yuki Tsunoda not starting. It was just an all-around awful weekend for AlphaTauri. Yuki didn't start due to an issue with his brakes. Pierre Gasly completed 3 laps before retiring due to a suspension problem. This comes after retiring in the first lap of the sprint race because of a crash and some damage that Gasly suffered. He then received a 5-place grid penalty for an unscheduled gearbox change after sprint qualifying. He then was required to start from the back of the grid because he exceeded his quota of power units. And then finally started from pit lane because of a new energy store specification. So pretty much what happened with Gasly's car from sprint qualifying to the race on Sunday. So from Saturday to Sunday, fitted a new internal combustion engine, turbocharger, MGUH, and MGUK, control electronics, and energy store. So they pretty much gave him not quite a new car, but close to a new car with all of the new additions to it. And none of it mattered. Both cars were not prepared. They weren't ready. Yuki was, it's unfortunate because he got into the slight, not crash, but he bumped into Robert Kubica on Saturday. Tough luck for Yuki. Gasly had to crash. Couldn't even, 3 laps was too much for it. So his car was not ready. And now they're behind Alpine in the constructors title. So not great if you're AlphaTauri. Hopefully they can pick it up and improve in the next couple of races because they would love a top 5 finish in the constructors championship. For the rest of the field, it was an up and down day. Leclerc finished 4th. The Sainz finished 6th. Leclerc is 6.5 points up on Sainz. I mentioned that earlier. Ferrari is 13.5 points behind McLaren. Fine day for Ferrari. I thought Leclerc was going to finish a little bit higher, but it didn't turn out that way. Sainz was never really in the thick of it. He was staying back quite a bit. 6 is a good finish for him. Stroll finishes 7th. Vettel finishes 12th for Aston Martin. I don't think I heard Stroll's name mentioned once on the broadcast on the main feed. I don't think I heard Stroll's name mentioned once. Vettel had the tap with Ocon on lap 15. So nothing really exciting from Aston Martin throughout the race. Alonso finishes 8th. Ocon finishes 10th for Alpine. Double points finish for them. Again, I can't think of a memorable moment involving Fernando Alonso. The Ocon bump with Vettel, I guess, is somewhat memorable, but nothing really exciting with Alpine. George Russell finishes 9th. Latifi finishes 11th for Williams, so just outside of a points finish for Williams. That kind of feels like in the future who they're going to be, like Williams and Alpine. That kind of feels like a bit of a rivalry down the road. Once Williams can start, being competitive once again, getting a better car, possibly better drivers, that feels like a rivalry down the road for me. I don't know why. I just have a hunch. Just have a feeling, really. Remarkable day for Russell, who finishes 9th after starting 14th. Latifi finished ahead of Vettel, which he's done that 4 times this year. He did it in Italy. He did it in Hungary, Great Britain, the first Austria race. I thought that was interesting. 4 times this year, Nicholas Latifi has finished ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Antonio Giovinazzi finishes 13th. Robert Kubica finishes 14th. Gio went off the track at turn 5 on lap 1, made contact with Sainz coming back onto the track, and he spun. So as a result, Gio got a 5-second penalty. He's really struggling to inspire me with Alfa Romeo. It'll be interesting to see what his prospects are returning to Alpha next season. Robert Kubica, I mean, he's been average in his return. He's replaced Kimi because Kimi's been dealing with COVID for the last 2 weeks. So I don't know. I guess I don't think, Kubica is going to be getting a starting gig in Formula One anytime soon again. Maybe he's trying to race for a job. Who knows? Alfa Romeo's in a really interesting position, especially now with Bottas coming in next season. Mick Schumacher finishes 15th. Nikita Mazepin retired from the race. Mazepin spun because, of course, he did. He also retired due to a power unit failure. Solid race for Mick Schumacher. He got spun by Mazepin. They made contact early on in the race, and then Mick recovered, and he got 15th. So good for him. Sergio Perez finished 5th for Red Bull after starting 8th. He got as high as 3rd, but due to a 5-second penalty, he finished 5th. And I thought it was a fair penalty. He left the track. He gained a lasting advantage against Leclerc. Fair enough. 5-second penalty. He's in 5th. Not the end of the world. I get that. That makes sense. Sprint qualifying, I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I think you have to make it 3 laps, no more than 3 laps, because nobody's interested in a 100-kilometer sprint race. No, it doesn't do anything for me. It was boring by the end of it, fairly interesting in the beginning, but that's about it. I think you make it 3 laps or less, make it just 1 lap maybe. Who knows? No one needs the 100-kilometer race on a Saturday. And I get that we're not doing the sprint race every weekend. It's just this didn't really do much for myself. Listen, I think there is something there with sprint qualifying. I think there is something there. Like, you can make it something. I just think 100 kilometers or whatever, 20 laps, 15 laps, whatever it was, too many laps, cut it into like 3, and you got sprint qualifying. And that's it. That's how you do it. Let me know what you guys think. That's Ian Reviews Sports on a 2021 Italian Grand Prix. We're off this week from Formula One, but we got a bunch of rugby we're covering. Be sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back with more stuff later on this week. Thanks again for watching. Peace out.